folks, we like to start the shows off with lighter topics and easier topics. So we're going to start off nice and easy, something not too controversial, which is South African race relations. So, South African president signs controversial land seizure law. This was 11 days ago today, January 24th. South African President Cyril Ramaphosa has signed into law a bill allowing land seizures by the state without compensation, a move that has put him at odds with some members of his government. Black people only own a small fraction of farmland nationwide more than 30 years after the end of the racist system of apartheid. The majority remains with the white minority. Just to flesh out those numbers a bit, in another article it cites white people are 7% of the South African population, and they own 70% of the farmland. So that is quite the disparity that still exists, despite the fact
that's the downside to peaceful revolution.
Yes. Right. Exactly. Yeah. We'll put it that way. Exactly. Right. 7% of the population.
They did it the other way. I promise you, it would not be like that.
Still own 70% of the farmland. This has led to frustration and anger over the slow pace of reform. The law outlines how expropriation can be done and on what basis by the state, the government says. It replaces the pre-democratic Expropriation Act of 1975, which placed an obligation on the state to pay owners it wanted to take land from under the principle of willing seller, willing buyer. The new law allows for expropriation without compensation only in circumstances where it is, quote, just and equitable and in the public interest to do so. This includes if the property is not being used and there's no intention to either develop or make money from it, or when it poses a risk to people. The president's spokesperson, Vincent Magwenya, said that under the law, the state may not expropriate property arbitrarily or for a purpose other than in the public interest. Expropriation may not be exercised unless the expropriating authority has, without success, attempted to reach an agreement with the owner, he added. So that means they have to approach the owner in good faith and try and make a deal. Now, is there some risk of arbitrary enforcement? Yeah, there always is. There's that risk with any government. But it does say, apparently, in writing here, you're not allowed to just come and take something with no moment's notice, as if you were, I don't know, let's say Israel, right? Like, it's not a West Bank type situation, right? So I'm sure, given that, I'm sure, our government will be just fine with this, since they're fine with Israel taking land with no justification, no notice, no negotiation, no nothing. Here it says that they are open to, in fact, they have to approach the landowner in good faith and try and work something out without simply taking it. The signing of the law comes after a 5-year consultative process, as well as the findings of a presidential panel set up to look into the issue. The pro-business Democratic Alliance, the second largest party in the government of national unity, the GNU, says it strongly opposes the law and was consulting with its lawyers. It says that while it supports legislation addressing land restitution, it takes issue with the process followed by the country's parliament to enact this law. The Freedom Front Plus, not to be confused with the Tesla Frequent Drivers program of the same name. The Freedom Front Plus, a party which defends the rights of the white minority and is also in the GNU, vows to challenge the constitutionality of the law and do everything in its power to have it amended if it is found to be unconstitutional. One of the sticking points for the party was the law's possible threat to private ownership. So let's hear what Donald Trump has to say about this, if anything. I mean, you think he could just stay out of this, but no. President Donald Trump has announced plans to cut off all future funding to South Africa until the country investigates his claims that certain classes of people are being treated very badly. He did not specify further or provide any evidence to support these assertions. Here he is.
Pre-social, you said that you were going to cut aid from South Africa. Will you plan to cut aid across other African nations, and why South Africa?
No, it's only South Africa. Terrible things are happening in South Africa. The leadership is doing some terrible things, horrible things. So that's under investigation right now. We'll make a determination. And until such time as we find out what South Africa is doing, They're taking away land, they're confiscating land, and actually they're doing things that are perhaps far worse than that.
And on the
They're taking away land. Don't you know it's bad to take away land by force? According to Donald Trump, he also truthed out. South Africa is confiscating land and treating certain classes of people very badly. The white class. It is a bad situation that the radical left media doesn't want to so much as mention. A massive human rights violation, at a minimum, is happening for all to see. The United States won't stand for it. We will act. Also, I will be cutting off all future funding to South Africa until a full investigation of this situation has been completed. I know I say America first, but God damn it, an injustice to white people somewhere is an injustice to white people everywhere. As the great Martin Luther King said, to borrow a phrase from the great Martin Luther King. Yes, is a what is it? An injustice to white people somewhere is a threat to white people everywhere. Right?
Yeah, that's quoted right on the mall.
Yeah, right. yeah, exactly. Right. So suppressed news quote tweets this. Honestly, if you replace South Africa with Israel, then Donald Trump's statement would make perfect sense. Yeah, let's give that a try. Israel is confiscating land and treating certain classes of people very badly. There you go. Yeah, I think that makes sense. Sense. I'll be cutting off all future funding to Israel until a full investigation of this situation has been completed. There you go. So you were close. You just had the wrong country.
Yep.
The Hampton Institute tweets out South Africa is being targeted by Trump for 3 reasons. 1, it is actively decolonizing by expropriating stolen land / wealth from its former white ruling class, Musk is a part of. More of that in a minute. 2, to punish them for holding Israel accountable for genocide. That's right. South Africa did bring the genocide case against Israel. And 3, to strike against BRICS. That's the Hampton Institute's theory. Nico House says Trump is threatening to sanction South Africa for taking back the land stolen from them by the former white apartheid state, as he's threatening to send troops to Greenland to, check notes, take their land for U.S. interests. Yes, exactly. Well said. Well said. But you could take it from some white South Africans themselves here. So Kim Heller is one of them. White South Africans are not victims. We are beneficiaries of a cruel racist system called apartheid, and we continue to benefit from this today in free South Africa. AfriForum, which we'll get to in a second, is a right-wing organization, and Donald Trump must speak to black leaders in South Africa, not a rabid racist minority. So AfriForum is a white South African advocacy group. This is from 2013, so they've been on the page of white genocide in South Africa pretty much, since apartheid was overturned, it seems. I don't know when they date back to exactly, but yes, this is the nature of the organization. We have some more on them here from this white South African named Dan Corder. Now, if that doesn't look like a white, I mean, he really looks the part of a white South African. Yeah. There he is. So here he is giving his take, a little more explanation here.
If Pixar put out a movie called Apartheid, he'd be the white guy.
He'd be in the trailer. Exactly.
Why Donald Trump is now lashing out. One of the reasons why Donald Trump is now lashing out at South Africa over untrue claims of land grabs is because of AfriForum, a lobby group that has been working tirelessly for years to try and convince world leaders that there are land grabs in South Africa and white people are under threat and under attack. AfriForum has also twisted reality to try and make it look like there is an above average rate of farm murders in South Africa, which has been exhaustively, thoroughly, repeatedly debunked by researchers and journalists from around the world at this point. But that didn't stop them from getting on Tucker Carlson's show on Fox News back in 2018 when it was like the most watched political show in America and spewing this nonsense. Soon after that, Tucker did a piece on land grabs and expropriation in South Africa. And soon after that, Donald Trump tweeted about the awful things going on in South Africa for the first time. And all of that and years more of AfriForum campaigning has led to this moment. There have been no land grabs in South Africa since 1994. Because before 1994, land grabs and unjust expropriation was kind of apartheid's whole thing. And before that, the English South African-led government's whole thing. See the 1913 Land Act. And before that, colonialism's whole thing. But this little thing called reality has not stopped AfriForum from spreading their nonsense. And they were thrilled yesterday morning when Trump lashed out at South Africa and threatened cuts, until they realized that Trump could cut back on things that really matter to AfriForum supporters, white farmers, like the AGOA deal that helps our agriculture sector so much. And by yesterday evening, a lobby group from South Africa was calling for a foreign government to sanction our democratically elected leaders based on lies, nonsense, evils that they accuse our government of doing that our government has not been doing. That's where we are.
Okay, so admittedly, I'm not an expert on this, but that seems to be a fairly reasonable breakdown of things, consistent with the reporting that we just cited out of the BBC. Don't forget, we have eminent domain laws here, where the government can, if push comes to shove, just take your land if they claim they have good reason to do so.
There's actually, if you know where to look in Central Park, there are the outlines from the foundations of houses that was an African-American neighborhood that actually took Central Park all the way to the Supreme Court to try to stop them from taking that land for the park.
That's right. That's right. So what Dan Corder just said there is that even the AfriForum people are a little hesitant that this funding, which is mostly healthcare funding, is going to negatively impact the South African people and then turn people against them. So here he is here. This is Ernst von Zyl, an AfriForum representative, saying we just want politicians punished, not the people.
Asking Donald Trump to target ANC leaders. What does that mean for our country?
The ANC is obviously, that's Cyril Ramaphosa's party.
Because this is the leaders of our country you're talking about.
Yes, it means when you push through destructive policies that are going to harm South Africa and regular South Africans, you should face consequences for it. We want the international role players to target with sanctions South African politicians that push through evil and destructive policies, not to punish the citizens of this country. And that has always been AfriForum's stance. As I said, we have the receipts to prove it. You can go through all of our stances on this issue over the years. It's always been punish the politicians that are seeking to push through policy for their own personal agenda and their party's own agenda rather than for the good of the country, and that will bring about the change that's necessary in South Africa.
That's right. He's for the people. As a white African,
all right. I gotta say, man, this is where you say I'm a child of the Cold War. You're a child of post 9/11. Okay, so for me, my lens, I'm like, how are these motherfuckers still a thing?
Right.
How are they still a thing? This is bringing me back to de Klerk. Really? These people have that kind of power and that kind of say in that country? Still?
Well, yes, and apparently so, and that explains why this quote unquote land grab law apparently had to be signed and had to be pursued, because yes, all these years later, 7% of the South African white population still owns 70+% of the farmland.
I can't believe that. So, we all wait, because in America, especially with Nelson Mandela, who was essentially canonized, right? We definitely had the perception that this was a rare and heartwarming story of people with historical differences resolving it fairly, where the black population took back their country and the whites who chose to remain became kind of, a subordinate minority. They never talked about this, that they were still going to own most of the land in the country. That's why I'm a little shocked that was the resolution when apartheid fell, that they left all the land to the white people. I'm amazed.
Well, Mandela remained on terrorist watch list until 2008. So, you know what I mean? So, you're right. I mean, even when I was in school, even elementary through junior high school, which was before 2008, obviously, way before, Mandela was taught in a positive light. But just like Martin Luther King, we like to learn in school about what great people these are. Meanwhile, we know that the government treats them as enemies, right? And so, South Africa, look, the legacy of apartheid seems to be alive and well, economically speaking, at least, which is why measures like this are being taken. Here's another white South African, Warren Robertson. As a white South African, I denounce AfriForum and their lies. There is no genocide of white people here. They are dangerous grifters intent on lining their pockets at the expense of their fellow South Africans. Let's try the leaders for treason, he says. All right, so Cyril Ramaphosa responds to Trump. South Africa is a constitutional democracy that is deeply rooted in the rule of law, justice, and equality. The South African government has not confiscated any lands. The recently adopted expropriation
They should.
Act, they should. They're working on it. But even under this law, they're saying they got to make you a deal first, and they have to articulate a clear reason. They can't just show up and kick you out the way the Zionists do. Right. The recently adopted Expropriation Act is not a confiscation instrument, but a constitutionally mandated legal process that ensures public access to land in an equitable and just manner as guided by the Constitution. South Africa, like the United States of America and other countries, has always had expropriation laws that balance the need for public usage of land and the protection of rights of property owners. We look forward to engaging with the Trump administration over our land reform policy and issues of bilateral interest. We are certain that out of those engagements, we will share a better and common understanding over these matters. The U.S. remains a key strategic political and trade partner for South Africa, with the exception of PEPFAR aid, which constitutes 17% of South Africa's HIV/AIDS program. There is no other funding that is received by South Africa from the United States. So Elon, quote tweets him, "Why do you have openly racist ownership laws?" Which, of course, they do not have openly racist ownership
Elon,
laws.
the white South African son of a, what was it, a diamond mine?
Was it an emerald mine? I think it was
an emerald mine.
Yeah. But this opened up a conversation, apparently. Apparently, Cyril Ramaphosa thought it was a good idea to give Elon a call after that exchange that they had. South Africa's president calls Musk to calm Trump land row. Yeah, I'm sure that went great. South Africa's president, Cyril Ramaphosa, has moved to diffuse a row with the new U.S. administration over a new land law by speaking to Elon Musk. Mr. Musk is a close advisor to U.S. President Donald Trump, who on Sunday threatened to cut all future funding to South Africa over allegations that it was confiscating land and treating certain classes of people very badly, as we heard earlier. The South Africa-born tech billionaire joined in the criticism, asking on X why Ramaphosa had openly racist ownership laws. Ramaphosa's office said in the call to Mr. Musk, the president reiterated South Africa's constitutionally embedded values of the respect for the rule of law, justice, fairness, and equality. So let's just go back to this tweet here because the conversation didn't quite end there. There was a reply here that caught Elon's eye from Jonathan Pallison. White South Africans are being persecuted for their race in their home country. Also, white South Africans are one of the few population groups that are fiscally positive when immigrating to Europe. We should allow more immigration of white South Africans, to which Elon replies, yes. So that gives you a good example of how that call went, I have a feeling. We don't really have new reporting on that as of now. So as of now, the plans seem to remain the same, although it does seem as though Ramaphosa at this moment has not backed down. And he mentions, he's quoted in that tweet, where is it? With the exception of PEPFAR aid, which constitutes 17% of the HIV/AIDS program, there's no other funding received by South Africa from the U.S. So maybe that is a signal that, hey, if this is a deal breaker, we'll just find another way to make up that 17%. We are not going to back down on this, which of course they shouldn't. Of course they shouldn't. But yeah, I mean, it just shows you the wind at their backs that MAGA feels. The fact that, you go on there, you do your little autistic salute, quote unquote.
Yeah. Is also no. I mean, his autism also causes him to endorse extremely racist tweets. Everybody knows that.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
It's a common symptom of autism.
This is what I mean. Like you're out there saluting on the stage. You're backing the AfD in Germany, And now you're vouching for white South African immigrants, saying there aren't enough white South Africans in South Africa. They need to let more of them in. It's just quite brazen. It's just quite brazen. This is what happens, I guess, when you win a mandate. You have the wind at your back, and there's that leaked audio that we didn't get to today. Maybe we'll get to on Thursday, because RFK just cleared the first hurdle to becoming HHS secretary. He made it out of committee, which is a good sign for him. At this point, I think it's overwhelmingly likely he'll get through. But there's a old audio of him saying, there aren't a lot of Nazis out there, but there are a lot of bootlickers and cowards. Well, that's true. Right? Like, you don't all have to be Nazis, but you just need a core group of just die-in-the-wool bigots, and then you need a bunch of bootlickers and cowards who figure out it's easier to go along than to resist, so what the hell? And now you see the former group represented in Elon Musk, who just with absolute full confidence goes out, does his little salute on the stage, backs a right-wing fascist German party, and now, yes, absolutely, yes, white South Africans are being persecuted. We need to increase their numbers. The white South Africans, one of history's greatest victims, according to Elon Musk.
Yeah, this is just amazing, and it is a very good example of when people tell you who they are, believe them. This is why my patience for people who want to join up with these people because they went after people that you didn't like or that you have a cultural grievance with. My patience for that from anyone who considers themselves on the left, even nominally, is very minimal. Is very minimal, because these people tell you again and again and again who they are. Okay, so they're going to take over the payment system. These are people who feel that the white South Africans are being oppressed.
Right.
So
Genocided.
what do you think they're going to do with that power? Why would you celebrate that? The enemy of your enemy is not always your friend. They could very easily replace what you hated with something far worse than the original thing. Now that you can balance both of those ideas at the same time. It's not you don't have to decide, well, I'm on the side of this rainbow fascist coalition, or I'm on the side of the more traditional jackbooted variety. You can blaze your own path there, man. You don't actually have to side with people like this. And in terms of the argument that he's making, white South Africans in their native land, are you fucking shitting me?
Well, yeah.
Are you fucking shitting me? The black people in that land are the natives to that land. And if you feel that because they've been there for so long, the whites, that they're now native to that land, well, you should shut the fuck up about Israel then, right?
Exactly.
You should shut the fuck up, because isn't that their whole argument? That they have this tenuous connection, which, by the way, the DNA shows is not true of most of the people claiming to be descended from that land as Jews. But okay, they say they were, they lived there 2,000 years ago, and you accept the formulation that they have a right to that land on that basis. Well, how much more so the vast majority of the population that is African, that is native to that land? These people should be happy that they're not getting thrown off that land. I'm amazed that they weren't, to be honest with you. That's the most shocking. I did not know they had 70% of the land still among the white people. I guess I never really thought about it. Never really thought about it. It certainly wasn't discussed when they presented, look, Truth and Reconciliation Commission. I mean, it was inspirational to humanity, honestly. That the way that apartheid ended, and there weren't pogroms and bloody orgies of revenge, the fact that it ended in such a humanitarian, decent way, it was such a hopeful vision of what people could do. I did not know that these kinds of iniquities remained very much ingrained in their society, and now you motherfuckers are going to come complain about it
when they do an expropriation bill that is not too dissimilar from our eminent domain laws.
We have eminent domain.
We have eminent domain. Right. Exactly.
How do you think they build the wall? How do you think they build the wall? They got to use a lot of eminent domain. What do you think, that land's all empty? They want to build the wall in?
Well, look, it's a pattern. I mean, when you look at these BRICS countries, when you look at Russia, when you look at China, when you look at South Africa, they show unbelievable restraint in the face of just the cruelest and most abject of Western fuckery. Like the fact that it took 30 years to get a bill that's this benign, through the government. Like, come on, you'd think this would be the starting point.
Well, I saw. I forget.
So it's a pattern. It's a pattern, but not restrained enough. This is a pattern. The West will just take and take and take and take and take. This is a pattern when it comes to, obviously, Israel, Palestine, UNRWA, which we're going to get to later. And Donald Trump feels a need to weigh in on this and flex, right? Well, we're going to cut off funding to South Africa until this is changed. If what he's saying is true there, which is it's just some healthcare funding and there's not that much funding, then what that means is Donald Trump is doing this as a political flex and as a signal to his base that America's back and we're not going to stand for any white people being bought off of their land anywhere in the world.
I forget what his name is off the top of my head. He's this really interesting Muslim commentator. I would love to get him on the show, actually. And I saw him talk about how they argue that the West can't give up its power over the rest of the world because of what the rest of the world will do to them. And one of the arguments he makes is, yeah, you think like that because that's what you would do. You can't imagine that people are more civilized than you, that there are people in the world. And you know what? The South Africans proved it. They are. Can you imagine what Europeans would have done in a reverse position if they had overthrown this oppressive apartheid system? They would have killed everybody.
Right. It would have been a bloodbath. Yep, exactly.
Please clap.